all of your forwarding and freight shipping needs, we at Trin Forwarding International are committed to product delivery. At Trin Forwarding, we have the much needed experience, professionalism, and due diligence in freight forwarding, shipping, and cargoes. We deliver with timeliness and precision. You can reach out to us at our Caribbean office in Trinidad and Tobago, telephone number 868-624-6250, or our Florida, USA office at 305-887-9724.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Interfaith Views and Issues on Alhikmat TV 24/7 online. It is indeed a pleasure to have with us in Alhikmat studio Father Johan Johnson. And welcome to the show, Father.
Thank you very much.
It's really a blessing and a privilege to have you with us here.
I'm blessed to be here.
Thank you very much. So stay tuned. We're going to talk with Father Johnson about his background, his interfaith relations. He's a teacher by profession, a priest, a man with a lot of experience from Denmark to from Sweden to Denmark to different places of the world. He has served, especially in New York, many years in New York, as the former rector of St. Martin Church in Harlem, New York.
Alhamdulillah, for free copies of the Holy Quran, contact Alhikmat Caribbean office at 1-868-325-8276. You can also follow us on Alhikmat TV, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc. For more information, you can also contact Alhikmat's Florida, USA office. You can visit our website at www.alhikmat.com or call us at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158.
Allahu ya Allahu ya Allahu, His throne extends over the heaven.
It's savings and big discounts when you shop at Fens nationwide. Upgrade your home or treat yourself to something special. Enjoy store-wide savings on furniture, appliances, electronics, bedroom, and so much more when you shop at Fens of Marbella, Chagonas, Pinal, and Piaco. Visit us in-store for more information or call 650-FENS, that's 650-3367. Or check us out on Facebook, Fens of Trinidad and Tobago, serving generations.
So, Father Johan Johnson, tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born, your upbringing, etc. You know, before the show, we touched base a little bit
Sure.
on you were born in Sweden and then you studied in France. And
Right.
yes.
I'm laughing because I was small when I was in France, so I don't know if I was studying too hard. But I was born in Stockholm, Sweden, really at the beginning of the Vietnam War. And the reason we were there was because my father was very against the war movement and was concerned about his family and the idea of us having to be in the military. There was a draft.
Yes.
And I have an older brother. And so he decided, we're going to move to Sweden. I was born and we stayed there just...
So your dad was originally from New York?
My dad is originally from Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
And moved to New York where he founded a church. And a retired clergyman. Now my father, I got to tell you, my father was 65 when he had me.
Wow.
So there was about a 30-year age difference between my dad and my mom. And
so not only was he 65, but he was doing fine. I think so.
He passed away in 1995 at the age of 98.
Wow.
So my father was born in 1897, and near the last third of his professional career, he decided he wanted to get away from the United States, and
So he was a priest, huh?
Oh, absolutely. He founded St. Martin's Church in 1928.
Wow.
And then in 1961, before I was born, my half-brother took it over. And he served as rector from 61 to 98.
And that is in Virginia?
That is in Harlem, in New York City.
Harlem.
In
Okay,
Harlem, yeah.
Okay.
And then I took over in 1999 and served as rector till 2015. So for 85 years of the organization's existence, there was always a Johnson
Yes.
that was in charge. It was first my father, then my brother, and then me.
You are from a very blessed family.
Well, I feel lucky.
I think we're very lucky here to have you in Alhikmat studio to talk a little bit. And you know, Father Johan, that's what our viewers love to view, to listen, to get that experience from people like you, your father, his background, from the church, St. Martin's in Harlem, New York, then your brother, then you. That is phenomenal. That's the kind of thing that we don't have nowadays.
No, it's a blessing. I got to say it's a blessing, but it's also a weight. It's a weight because when I was trying to do things in Harlem, they're like, "Oh, that's the little baby who used to run around the church." So it's hard. What Jesus says is you have to leave your town to become known. And so I sort of set off on an odyssey in 2015. And now I'm blessed to be in the Miami area.
Yeah, but I must again remark, your father, a baby at 65, there are very few people like that nowadays.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it existed normally, but you don't have those kind of people alive again.
That's true. Now my mother, my mother joked with me, she passed away in 2015, in fact. And she joked with me that I wasn't a planned baby.
You were not their plan, but it was God's plan.
Thank you.
I like that. It was not their plan, but it was. So how old was your mom when she passed away?
She was 92.
And your dad was
98.
98.
Right.
These people were blessed.
Yeah.
It's the prayer, it's the lifestyle. And these are the kind of things I think the generation nowadays need to hear. It's not you got to go in books to find that.
Yeah.
You got to go in books to find that kind of history that is more into the archives,
Sure.
But their prayers, their lifestyle, the things they ate, the way they ate, that is really interesting, very educational.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time as a kid going to Europe because every time my father would go there, he was a retired clergyman, a retired African-American clergyman from Harlem who didn't speak Swedish, didn't speak Danish, didn't speak, French. And we would go to these countries and he would get fed up with them. And he'd say, "Come on, we're going back to New York." And we would end up back in New York. And so New York has always been this draw for us because of the multicultural nature of the city and because of my father's experience there. He ran a church and had a wide swath of people that he was involved with. So
So that's how you grew up in Sweden.
Yeah.
And so how you ended up back into France and Denmark?
Well, that was mainly as a child, and then I came back and went away to college like most people do. I went up to New England and a small little college called Clark in Worcester, Massachusetts, and ultimately came back to New York and was deciding what to do. And I ended up starting in seminary with no intention of putting on one of these and being ordained.
So where was this seminary?
In New York City.
Okay.
Union Theological Seminary is part of Columbia University.
Okay.
And so I went there planning to spend maybe a year and then move on and do something. And God spoke to me. And God spoke to me not like some bright light coming down, but God spoke to me through the children that I started to work with. I started a tutoring program in the basement of my church. And started working with middle school kids, and founded an organization called the St. Luke's Saturday School. It was an offshoot of St. Martin's, and that ran for 20 years, and eventually by 2004, morphed into us founding an independent day school called Harlem Academy.
And that was also based
out of the church.
Out of the church.
Correct. And so that started in 2004 and has been going gangbusters and doing quite well. And we're getting students into Ivy League colleges, into very, very good independent schools throughout the Northeast.
So it's a free school, or
It's a
private paid school?
It's a private school, and as I was explaining to you before, private schools historically have been expensive and been very sort of exclusionary. So you had to come from the right family. You had to do this and you had to do that.
Yes.
And what we have done in Harlem, and then I replicated it again in Connecticut, was to start an independent school with a sliding scale tuition. So it was the idea that people could come in and pay what they could afford. And we would look at their, at their salary and look at them and say, all right, you can pay $5,000, you can pay 10, and the whole idea was...
So it was a similar pattern in Connecticut?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And what that does, though, is it puts a lot of pressure on you to do fundraising outside, because you have to make up that difference.
Yes.
The majority of independent schools, 90% of their budget comes from tuition. And so what we were trying to do was create a model where the budget could be filled by other gifts from foundations, from corporations,
right,
and from angels, individuals.
Yes, yes. So you did fundraising projects, and that's where sort of scholarship goes to the students, huh?
Exactly.
So students, were given the choice to pay based on their ability.
Correct. I would say they were based
on a parent's ability.
Right. They weren't given a choice. They were told, "You've been accepted. This is the income that you have reported to us. This is what you're going to need to pay as your contribution to this school."
Yes, and the enrollment was based on what? You said selected students?
Yes, they would have to show.
What were the criteria?
Well, they'd have
the requirements.
They'd have to show promise. They'd have to show interest. We would interview them. We would interview their families.
Oh.
We would then talk about the commitment it takes, because when you're educating a child, it's not just the child.
Yes.
It's the family.
The whole background.
And so, for instance, in Connecticut, at the school I started there called Trinity Academy, we ran from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 11 months a year. And what we found was that the kids increased their reading scores by a whole year.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And we would provide breakfast, we would provide lunch, and then aftercare, and people would come and...
That is interesting.
And because what we found was, and we did it 11 months a year because...
What year was that?
This was 2012.
And how many students you're looking at?
We're looking, at that point, we started with 15 students. It was one grade, and what you do is you start with one grade,
private schools,
and then you build per year.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they're up to now. At Harlem Academy, my guess is that they're up to probably about 125 to 150 students in the school.
So was it open for only Christians?
Not at all. It's an
Jews, Christians?
Absolutely. And what we determined was that the idea is that schools are better functioning when there is the idea of spirituality involved.
Yes.
We're not telling you what to believe. What we're trying to do is expose you to various views.
Interesting.
So that we would have an interfaith chapel, and we would bring students there. So that was an important aspect of how we founded the school, because we felt that you're not truly educated unless you understand the differences in history and belief and culture that comes from our faith backgrounds.
So you were the founder of those both schools,
Correct.
Harlem Academy
and Trinity Academy.
And Trinity Academy in Connecticut, and Harlem in
New York. Yeah.
But you were saying that, Father Johan, and you send me right back to when I were about 10 years of age, because I grew up in a very similar environment, a school of that nature, private school.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that. I don't even think my kids know that, or a lot of people around me don't know that. And as you mentioned in this, you sent my memory all the way back.
Right.
It was called a Beacon Preparatory Academy.
And that was in Trinidad?
It was in Trinidad and Tobago. It does not exist anymore. It was a private school. It used to top the nation in those days. And it was run by a British woman, pure white. So now your school had certain criteria. That had certain criteria. It was really based on only white people.
Right.
I got in because my grandfather lived next door to the school.
Right.
That is interesting. And the principal knew him and he knew them. It created a little problem when I got enrolled and was accepted as an exception. But those were those days when the British were very heavily influential in the Caribbean because the British ruled, you know, the colony sort of lifestyle.
Yep.
And we had to pay. It was, you talking about, it was in the 60s. Yeah, I think it was in the 60s. $100 a term, I think.
Which was a lot of money then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there and then. So you were talking about that school and the environment, but I learned so much because it was based more on a kind of class. It wasn't that it was only segregated only for whites, not really.
Right.
But that was the class. It had 2 or 3 African students, but their fathers were into the high commissioner kind of level and law enforcement. It had another Indian student. His father was a judge. So it was not like cut off only white, but it was based on a kind of,
Sure.
I don't know what it is. What I want to be correct on what I say, but it was very selective.
Right.
And I did learn a lot. I must say, I learned a lot from the background. I mean, that's where I got my Christianity background from. And then I got a scholarship to go to another college called St. Anthony's College, where I got a scholarship from that school. And there's where I got the opportunity to get into becoming a pastor.
I see.
Oh yeah, that's where my history came. And as I said, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people just heard that I had a scholarship too, but that's the background. But I did enjoy it, and I mean, I congratulate you on that vision to
I think
establishing that kind of institution.
I was going to say there's many studies that are done now that shows that the best education will happen in a multicultural environment.
Of course.
Because you're learning different things from different people, just
Yes.
like you're talking about.
Yes.
And the issue I find, particularly in the United States, is that most public schools are segregated, and they're segregated by zip code, and it's based on the taxes you pay. So the taxes that you pay, for instance, in Greenwich, Connecticut, are significantly different than the taxes you pay, let's say, in Camden, New Jersey, or in Harlem, New York. And that money is going to go into those schools. And so the people that go to the Greenwich, Connecticut school are ones that are living in that zip code and can afford to live in that zip code. Independent schools, however, attract people from all over.
Right.
And people want to go there because
So you have the diversity.
Correct. To me, that's the difference and the wonderful thing about independent schools.
Yeah, and then it was not that it was elite, but it was more, it was technically, that's been elite when their vision is straight and their purpose and objectives are all there, as opposed to just a zip code and anybody and anything comes in.
Correct. And I think that the important thing is to bring different people into your environment because you can learn.
Of course. I mean, that helped me a great deal as a young boy. My parents got me into that school when I was at the age of 8.
Right.
That was my whole primary beginning. And it did help my vision, my interfaith vision, my multi-faith vision, multicultural vision. As I said, the majority were whites because the principal was a white, was, you know what I'm saying. And then in those days, you got to understand how things work. But then when I sat down and I look at it after, it was not just about race. It was about people would have a different vision.
And culture.
And intellectualism.
Sure.
So that was their style of screening the students, I would want to think.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why you are in the teaching career, and I think we need a lot more people like that. Nowadays, though, what I've seen some private schools, but it's more or less like public, huh? It has become very commercial. Well,
Well-
what do you think of? Very commercial.
Well, I think I think many of the private schools are doing the best teaching available, and because they're not constrained by state mandates and the various things.
Okay, yeah.
But what private schools or independent schools, it used to be called private schools, now they're called independent. What they are constrained by is their finances. So what we're concerned about at St. Mark's School is we're trying to grow the population. We have a wonderful new head of school, a gentleman named Dr. Tainter, Spence Tainter. I'd recommend you bring him here and speak to him as well.
So he's the
Head of school, and I'm the head of the church and school, but he's the head of the school.
right.
And so,
Your overall director.
correct.
Well, as you said, the interim rector.
Right, exactly.
Of the St. Mark's Episcopal Church.
Church and school. And so what
And this is located where?
This is located on East Oakland Park Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale,
Okay.
just on the border of Fort Lauderdale and Oakland Park.
Okay, beautiful, yeah.
And so what I was saying was the constraint that we have at St. Mark's is to try and build the enrollment, because when we can get more students in, then our finances get better, and then we can offer more programs. And when schools shrink, then they clearly their programs have to shrink.
Yes.
And
yes.
so that's the crux of the matter, that from all independent schools, not just St. Mark's.
Of course, and the programs are pretty expensive.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
You got to keep up with the curriculum. You got to keep up with science and technology, and
Correct.
all the different things out there.
Out of all the schools, I think I was told, out of all the schools in the Florida Independent School Association, there are 5 which have land that borders on water. We're one of those 5. And so we have, for instance, one of the things that we have that is both a blessing and sometimes a curse is that we have that water and we have a seawall, and that seawall is now being eroded, and we have to fix that seawall, and that's going to cost a great deal of money. But at the same time, what Dr. Tainter and I are working on is the idea of not just to fix the seawall, but to then expand it. And now we're going to try and put rowing and sailing and having STEM classes there to work on the idea of, well, what does it mean to have sea levels rising? And when
Yes.
you have 7th and 8th graders working on that, their minds are so wonderful, and
It's going to be like the ocean.
exactly
Yes.
exactly.
yes.
So that's what the types of things that we're working on there at St. Mark's to try and provide a world-class education for families and students.
And with someone of your background and your experience as the founder of the what you call the
Harlem Academy.
Harlem Academy and
Trinity
in Connecticut, I think you're a blessing
Well,
for St. Mark's. Huh?
I'm lucky to be here. I'm learning more. I mean, I'm a newbie to Florida, and so I know very little. I've been in Florida now about 5 months, and
yes.
so I'm still learning the ropes here.
Right.
But as I learn, I'm growing.
But
And
I suppose it's more or less the same principle like New York and
It is.
Connecticut, etc. Just the mindset of some people may be different.
it is.
Because Florida is more a sort of resort mentality.
Yep.
It's a little more laid back than the New York and the New Jersey fast life. Have you experienced that?
Very much so.
It is, huh? Even
Yeah.
in the church?
In the church, yeah. I think in the southern part of the United States, there's a great deal more of respect for the church and for religious faith
Oh, truly?
than I would say in the Northeast. In the Northeast, I felt like we had to compete more and explain why are you an Episcopal school? Why are you a faith-based school? Here in the Southeast, it's much more part of the culture. And so I think that's a very good thing and helps
Very
us.
good. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons for that is because of Florida being that senior citizen kind of majority people once upon a time. Now it's getting different, but it is. You cannot get rid of that. A lot of people from all over America come and reside here, so they've already seen life. And they look at life differently, as opposed to people in the north. They are now building a materialistic world. Most of the people, generally speaking, that category of seniors, they have seen life, they have built it. So now they're looking for God.
Yeah.
And they're looking for that peace and tranquility in their hearts and their family and their lifestyle. So it's right, and you're totally correct that these kind of people will have a different vision.
Yeah. No, I've been blessed to be here and learn more about the culture and learn more about the wonderful things that have been going on here in the Diocese of Southeast Florida.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been here for approximately 30 years, and that's what I've seen. I mean, in the last 30 years, Florida has become very commercial, like all over the world. But before that, it was more about that sort of resort mentality, senior citizens, and they were really, if you go to some of these residential areas, I go to a couple of these programs where they have a clubhouse gathering to talk about religion and life. Majority are all in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and you'll be amazed how they concentrate, they sit back, and they're ready to really learn at that age.
Yeah.
And younger minds, you can't get them to concentrate.
There's a book that my brother gave me by a former Jesuit priest named Richard Rohr, and the title of the book is called Learning to Fall. And the premise of his book is about first half of life issues versus second half of life issues.
Wow.
And the first half of life issues, we're all sort of striving to get up the hill and to make our mark and to say, hey, I'm somebody, I'm here.
Yes.
And pay attention to me. And the second half of life, we've done that.
Yeah.
We've done that, and now how do I establish myself? How do I be Johan Johnson in my second half of life? How do I interact with people? And what makes success? What I defined as success at 20, I might not define as success at 50.
Wow.
You know?
I like that. You know, before we got to go on a short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little more on your interfaith background.
Sure.
And the importance of interfaith and why it is so important to communicate and relate with people of other faiths and cultures. But I loved what you just said about that half.
The first half versus the
first
second.
half of your life to the second half. There's a famous joke about life, which is a reality. And before we get on the break, I want to share that with our viewers and myself and you. Well, a lot of people, when they're in their 20s and 25, as you rightly said, it's all about what other people think and how other people think about my car, my house, my career, my lifestyle, and whatever I'm building.
Right.
It's all about how other people would think. And many a times, we do a lot of things only based on how other people will think of us. And when we reach into our 60s and 65, etc., we realize nobody was thinking anything about us.
That's right.
Nobody cared about us.
Right.
We were just living half of our life to please other people.
Yep.
And now, when it's at this age, we are ready to live our life to please ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is such a true thing, huh? Haven't
Yep.
you noticed that with people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that's when all the things you spend that first half of your life making, at this age you realize you don't need it, so you start giving it away.
Yeah.
Anyhow, stay tuned. We are talking to Father Johan Johnson, and he is the interim rector of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, a man who was the founder of and I want to make sure I get these right, St. Martin
Harlem Academy. And
Harlem Academy and
Trinity.
Trinity Academy in Connecticut. Pleasure to talk to him, to have him in the studio, Alhikmat studio. We learn a lot. Our viewers worldwide definitely will learn a lot, and we will continue our conversation on some interfaith issues and views after we return from the short break. Thank you very much.
Dawah and Interfaith Institute presents for the first time in USA Dawah and Interfaith training with education in world religions from religious professors and spiritual leaders of different faiths. This is a 6-month weekend course designed for brothers and sisters local, national, and international who are seeking to learn the importance of Dawah and better understanding of faith and cultures. For more information, please contact 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158. You can also contact via email at alhikmat@alhikmat.com or visit our website www.alhikmat.com. Alhamdulillah, for free copies of the Holy Quran, contact Al-Hikmat Caribbean office at 1-868-325-8276. You can also follow us on Al-Hikmat TV, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc. For more information, you can also contact Alhikmat's Florida USA office. You can visit our website at www.alhikmat.com or call us at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158.
Allah, ya Allah, ya Allah. His throne extends over the heavens.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Interfaith Views and Issues on Alhikmat TV 24/7 online. Once more, it is a pleasure to have with us in Alhikmat studio Father Johan Johnson, the interim rector of St. Mark's Episcopal Church here in South Florida. So welcome back to the show, Father. And I know we had a beautiful conversation on your educational background and experience. And so tell us a little bit about Interfaith, your experience in Interfaith and people of different faiths, etc.
Well, when I left St. Martin's in Harlem in 2015, I went to a rather prestigious boarding school called the Petty School, right outside of Princeton, New Jersey. And it's a multi-faith school that was probably 30% Roman Catholic, 30% Jewish, probably 5% Muslim, and a smattering of this and that. But it's interesting. What they talk about these days is they talk about another group called the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, that they have no background.
I like that.
They just don't have, their parents didn't give them any background, in the church, or in the mosque, or in the temple, and they are, by tradition, perhaps they go to church, maybe on Christmas, maybe, but don't really have a background. And so what I spent a great deal of time doing was bringing in various faith leaders to try and expose those kids, 9th through 12th graders, to various backgrounds and faith traditions. Because I think, as I said, I think it's so important to have an understanding of that. But too often I find these days, families will say, we're not really sure, we're going to let Johnny or Joe or Raheem or whoever, they'll decide when they grow up.
Yes.
But by doing that, they're making a decision. They're not making a decision, and that in itself makes a decision and robs, in my view, the child of a rich heritage and a background of, well, gee, this is what Muslims believe. This is what Christians believe. This is what Jews believe. This is what Sikhs believe. And I think that what my experience was in New Jersey was that the kids, if they couldn't quantify it, it didn't help them to go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. It didn't mean much.
Yes.
And I think that what religion does, no matter what you believe, religion provides the idea of transformation.
Yes.
And too often in this society, we're in a transactional relationship. You give me this, I'll do that. And I believe much more in a transformational relationship where I'm going to do this not expecting anything in return.
Yes.
But
yes.
by giving, I'm actually receiving.
Of course, and that's how people of God are supposed to think.
Sure.
And I think some of those parents who left the children
To their own designs.
to their own designs and
Right.
desire, those are the kind of children that tell you today, well, my parents were Muslims, my parents were Christians, my parents were Jews, but I am of no religion.
Correct.
And I think that's the point is very sad, because that's why you're parents, and that's why God blessed you to, or God entrusted you with these kids to give them some vision and guideline. I mean, they will make the decision on choosing what they want and how they want to pray and how they want to believe. But as parents, you need to do some sort of guidelines and some sense of direction for them,
Absolutely.
as you do with education, biology and chemistry and mathematics.
Yeah.
Why don't we give them some vision and direction in the line and path of God?
I'm fighting that battle every day.
Yeah, I see parents do that. They enforce on their children why they must learn English and Spanish and maths and chemistry and biology, but you don't give them a vision on God. That is sad, eh?
I truly believe that, and I think that it shows in our culture throughout the world, and particularly here in the United States, there is a lack of belief in institutions. We don't trust the government. We don't trust the church. We don't trust banks. We don't trust, name it. We don't trust these organizations and these institutions because they create this establishment, and the people in the establishment quite often are looking out for themselves.
Yes.
And so I think that it is a very sad day, and I think that however, there is a great deal of light that God continues to shine upon us, and we just need to be open to it and looking for it and have some more trust.
So a person with your background of education, a priest, a father priest,
Yep.
a family of priests,
Yes.
that's an interesting point. And I know you have that vision of interfaith relationship and that whole different perspective of getting mission accomplished. I think time has gone. We have a lot of interfaith talk going on, a lot of interfaith meetings and dialogues. That's excellent, and we need that. Those are the basic grassroots thing. But tell me, with your New York background and New Jersey and now here, from a godly point of view, and this just came onto my mind as we were talking, and that's what I love to have, a natural conversation. Those parents who tell children about that, or tell people, or let the children make their own decision, as you said before, blank minds when it comes to God.
Right.
Let us turn a little to gun violence. I mean, this is very complicated, but throughout the world today, we have a lot of crime.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of crime. Anywhere you go now, there are a lot of crime. And there are a lot of people in a lot of countries who got a lot of things in place that keep down crime. But it doesn't mean that there isn't crime. Keeping down crime means that crime is there.
Right.
You just keep it down. So, my opinion, and I want to hear your opinion about it. I always believe that God is the solution to this. And because a lot of people don't have God in them, that's why you have a lot of crime.
Yeah. No,
How would you explain that to from your experience?
I think that there is a great deal of sickness and sadness and lack of connection with one another. When we have a lack of connection between people, there's a lack of a connection between me and God. Because for me, right now, you're God. I'm seeing your God inside you. You should be seeing God inside of me. And the way I treat you is the way I treat God.
Of course.
And when you have...
Because it's because of God that we connect.
Correct.
And because of our connection with God, who taught us to connect, we connect.
Correct. And when you have people like, a few years back, a guy named Dylan Roof, who walks into, I think it was in South Carolina, walks into a church
Yeah.
and shoots up people. Or you have the guy in Vegas shooting people from a hotel. It is
A guy walks into a synagogue, shoots people. A guy
Correct.
walks into a mosque in New Zealand,
Exactly.
shoots people. I mean,
it's mind blowing, but that's a symptom. That what's really going on is this lack of connection we have with one another, where we would allow people to fall away from the idea of our connection to one another. And so I think it's certainly we need gun safety, absolutely. And I look around at the various politicians who are running for president now, and I'm saddened by the fact that we don't have people who are strongly raising that up. I think I believe myself that the former mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg, spent a lot of time working on this since he's left, and so I'm hopeful and interested to hear more from him. But that's dealing just with the wound and
Yes.
putting a Band-Aid on it. We have to cure it from inside.
of course, and that's where God comes in.
Exactly.
God is the prevention to gun violence.
Yeah.
I know some of our viewers there probably saying, well, what about religion and those who went to war in the name of religion? I have always told people very simple. That's not the religion that went to war. It's man who used religion for their own personal political whims and fancies, their personal agenda.
Absolutely.
They use the power of religion, the strength in religion, to defend their own ego, their own desires, and they go to war with other people. And it could be any religion, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, wherever you have these extremists and radicals who use religion to kill other people, it's all about your own personal power.
Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. I tell people, so you cannot blame God and you cannot blame religion.
Yeah.
But now when I look around in the world and I see the kind of crime that goes on and the kind of murdering, I mean, it's sad. It's because people don't have God to turn into. People kill themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a shame that people will use religion as a crux at times. I did my doctoral thesis. I have a PhD in educational administration. And I did my...
I should be saying Dr. Johan Johnson. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
I apologize for that, yes.
So I did my PhD at Fordham University in New York City.
And what did you do your PhD in?
Educational administration and urban education.
But we missed that out, man.
Yeah.
That's the key thing. You got a doctorate in education.
Correct. After seminary, I did that.
And ministerial.
Correct. And so I did my thesis, my doctoral thesis, on the idea of religion and public policy. And so I went around and I did a case study, and I interviewed religious leaders and I interviewed political leaders. And I went to the political leaders and I said, gee, if you're bringing a certain policy to bear, how important it is to get the imam, or how important is it to get the bishop, or how important is it to get the rabbi to support you? And the political leaders looked at me and said, if the religious leaders support me, then I think it's important. If they don't support me, I ignore them. And so essentially, if you're going to help me, I'm going to roll you out, put you in your gown and your clerical collar.
Yes.
And that'll show that I've got support. If I'm opposed to you, I'm going to keep you behind the cameras. And so it was telling to me that politicians were very sort of transactional.
I think it's all about a deal.
Exactly.
It's all about a transaction.
Exactly.
It's all about a deal. And talking about that, because Amanda, with your background, a doctorate in education and religion, and your background of education and churches, etc., I think, unfortunately, that politicians do not realize the fact that the people that they try to get to vote for them and the people that they're trying to rule or they are presiding over, that's why you call a man a president.
Yep.
He presides, he's overall the president in charge. if they would only get the God-conscious minded people, it may help them think a little different.
Yeah.
But I think and I'm just going on what you have said, it's just like they don't care. If the religious people join them, okay. If they don't support them, they don't care. They then please the corrupted-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to please corrupted-minded people, you will do corrupted things.
Yeah. What politicians are very good at is going like this and figuring out where the wind is blowing. And then they get behind that wind and say, all right, and and if you're talking about gun safety, many of the politicians feel the wind from the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Mm-hmm. And if gun safety groups start to be a big thing, they'll say, okay, we're into gun safety. Unfortunately, politicians don't lead and they don't take a stand because they're getting up trying to get your vote.
Mm-hmm. So they go with the wind, right?
They go with the wind. And I often joke that if there was a politician who got up and said, vote for me because I want a job and I want health care, I would vote for them. Because they all get up and say, oh, we're going to do this for the American people, we're going to do that for the American people, when most of it's a crock.
And it's not about that, it's all about themselves.
Exactly.
Getting the vote.
So I think that it's, and I don't think that's anything different in 2020 than it was in...
Of course, yeah. And they just do and say, well, actually not do, they say
right.
what the people want to hear.
Exactly.
They talk about that to get the vote, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get it done.
But I think that the important point that you're bringing up is that there needs to be a strong group of interfaith leaders mm-hmm. who are getting up and as a concerted voice saying, this is what we stand for. We stand for love. We stand for connection with one another. Mm-hmm. And anything that goes against that, we stand against, and that needs to be raised up.
We need to, because most of these voters are godly people.
Many of them are, and they get confused by the Fox News. They get confused by the partisan or the CNN or whatever it is.
Whoever takes side, yeah.
And instead of saying, "What's God calling me to do?" Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that was I think the most sad thing. I don't know if you watched any of the impeachment trials recently, and whether you like him or whether you don't like him, Mitt Romney, the Republican senator from Utah, said, I'm voting to convict this president mm-hmm. because when I look at my faith background, he's been doing things that are not the right thing to do. Now, many people will say he was wrong, or many people will say he was right. The president went and made fun of him.
Yeah.
And he was standing up for his religious views.
Yes, yes.
And I think we need more people. Doesn't matter the decision they come to, but the algorithm that they use to decide, this is how I'm going to decide, should come from their faith background. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's an important role that a group of interfaith leaders can champion.
We need to really get that going, because it's so important. Mannerism, discipline has all gone down the drain. I looked at the State of the Union address where the president refused to shake the hand of
Nancy Pelosi,
the Speaker of the House, and she tore up the document.
Correct.
I mean, on both sides, it was bad.
Correct.
You were representing the House as a Speaker. You represented the President, and that discipline, because of your differences and your hate for one another, you misrepresented your position, your leadership position. Where does that leave the other regular politicians, the other regular senators and congressmen? Where does that leave teachers and students to do? Tomorrow, students will tear the examination papers and throw it on the teacher's face. Yeah. Because that's what you saw happening at the highest level in the country.
Those are the examples they're setting. It's sad. Michelle Obama at one point said, when they go low, we go high. And now everybody is going low.
And that's what we saw.
Yeah.
You went low, well, I go lower.
It's like limbo. You're doing the limbo.
Yes, and I was very much, and I got up and I told people in joint gatherings, Republicans and Democrats. I said this has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It has something to do with discipline, mannerism, and your position of leadership. Whether you have differences of opinion, you need to carry about that good characteristic, discipline, and mannerism. That's so very important.
I preached about it as well in my church. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I was thinking of students and children. They would totally disrespect their principal and teachers if they disagree with them.
Yep.
That will make a mess. That will now brew gun violence.
Yeah, exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of level I think the interfaith people, the religious leaders need to come together and say, hey, Madam Speaker, hi, Mr. President, we don't care about your Republican-Democrat differences. You keep that within the House and the Senate and in the political arena. But when it comes to your leadership that God blessed you with, you demonstrate the position of leadership for the future generation and betterment of this country. I think they need to understand that.
I think that understanding comes from growing up with a faith tradition.
Yes.
And growing up and recognizing, I'm not just speaking here about me. I might have particular thoughts about this candidate or that candidate, but what I do feel strongly about is my connection with you. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, doesn't matter. And I think the important thing is to have that respectful dialogue.
Of course. I tell my students that a lot of times. I said, listen, when you're in a religious garb, you represent not only yourself and your name, you represent your religion, your belief, your lifestyle. You got to act even better. You got to sacrifice your personal egos and act better. If you have no garb on, you're still a human being.
Yep.
You got to represent the qualities of a good human being.
Yep.
So come on, what are we doing? What has happened? Sometimes we forget our religion, our position, the fact that we are human beings.
And I was watching last night. I typically try and flip between Fox News and CNN because I want to see
the balance.
The balance. And what I found, and I got to say, particularly on Fox and somewhat on CNN, but particularly on Fox, all they were doing was name calling. They were making fun of people and saying, "Oh, they're a bad person," as opposed to saying, "This is their position, which we don't agree with, but this is their position." But it gets better ratings to say.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Johan Johnson, it was really a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it.
We discussed a lot, and I'm sure viewers there will benefit a lot from your background, your education as a pastor, a father, coming from a family of priesthood sort of background, and your educational background, and being founder of the different schools and academy in Harlem, New York, and Connecticut. I mean, it's a blessing to have you, the kind of vision, the kind of thought, and I think that's what we need, and that's why we talk and invite people like you on this show, so we can get that kind of vision out there, whether the politicians, the students, the children, people of different faiths can benefit from this sort of conversation. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
It was a blessing to have you with us, and we surely will have you come back and discuss other aspects and different topics. So thank you also very much, our viewers out there, for taking the time to tune into Alhikmat TV to view this program. You can tune into Alhikmat TV 24/7 online. And thank you very much again. And you can pass this message on, check us out on YouTube, on Facebook, and all the different social media, so you can benefit and you can share this message to your friends and colleagues worldwide. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Get everything you need at Penn's Agri Center and Hardware Superstore, located at 243 Southern Main Road, Marabella. We carry a wide selection of hardware and agri products. Visit us in-store or call 650-3367.
Casa Nouveau Investments in Guyana. Sharia Bacchus, CEO of Casa Nouveau Investments. Brokering of sales and rentals, commercial properties, industrial properties, residential properties, and land. Property management, property development, interior design, and real estate investment consultancy. For more information, please call at 954-326-9537 or 592-643-5948. You can also email at shariabacchus3@gmail.com. Dawah and Interfaith Institute presents for the first time in USA Dawah and Interfaith training with education in world religions from religious professors and spiritual leaders of different faiths. This is a 6-month weekend course designed for brothers and sisters local, national, and international who are seeking to learn the importance of Dawah and better understanding of faith and cultures. For more information, please contact 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158. You can also contact via email at alhikmat@alhikmat.com or visit our website www.alhikmat.com. Linda M. Kaplan, PA, an immigration law firm. Over 40 years of legal services in immigration and naturalization matters. Contact her at 305-670-7665. Once again, 305-670-7665, or email her at lk@lindakaplan.com or visit her website lindakaplan.com. You can also contact for more details the Alhikmat office at 954-986-0158 or 1-800-804-0267. You can also reach out to them via email at alhikmat@alhikmat.com, the website www.alhikmat.com, and visit the Alhikmat TV www.alhikmattv.com. Alhamdulillah, for free copies of the Holy Quran, contact Alhikmat Caribbean office at 1-868-325-8276. You can also follow us on Alhikmat TV, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc. For more information, you can also contact Alhikmat's Florida USA office. You can visit our website at www.alhikmat.com or call us at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158.
Allahu ya Allahu ya Allahu, His throne extends over